This is today's number 6 most urgent vulnerability on the Daily Ranked CVE Brief, where we focus on what to patch first, ranked by real exploitation signal, CISA KEV, first EPSS, and CVSS. The issue is CVE 2026-48282 in Adobe ColdFusion, and it earns the runtime for 3 reasons. First, it is a perfect CVSS 10.0. Second, CISA lists it in the Node Exploited Vulnerabilities catalog, which means exploitation is not just theoretical. Third, the official description says the flaw can lead to arbitrary code execution in the context of the current user, with no user interaction required. If ColdFusion is part of your internet-facing application stack, this is a priority item. CVE 2026-48282 affects Adobe ColdFusion. The official NVD description says ColdFusion versions 2025.9, 2023.20, and earlier are affected by an improper limitation of a path name to a restricted directory, more commonly called path traversal. The weakness is CVE-22. In plain English, software often expects file paths to stay inside a safe, intended directory. A path traversal flaw means the application does not sufficiently constrain that path. An attacker may be able to make the application reach outside the directory it was supposed to use. In this case, the stated impact is especially serious: arbitrary code execution in the context of the current user. That means the risk is not limited to reading a stray file. The concern is attacker-controlled code running with the privileges available to the ColdFusion process. Score verdict. This is a maximum severity remote code execution risk, not a routine application bug. The most important CVSS signal is reachability. The vector shows network attack vector, low attack complexity, no privileges required, and no user interaction. In practical terms, a vulnerable exposed system does not need a victim to click something, and the attacker does not need to already have an account. The second key signal is impact. The vector marks confidentiality, integrity, and availability impact as high, and scope is changed. That combination means successful exploitation can cross a boundary and affect more than the narrow component that initially mishandled the path. We do not need to recite every metric to understand the priority. Remote, unauthenticated, no user interaction, full impact, and changed scope is why this lands at 10.0. The real-world danger is the KEV flag. CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog is a major triage signal because it separates vulnerabilities that merely could be exploited from vulnerabilities with known exploitation activity. We are not attributing that activity to any actor or campaign here, because that information is not in the provided data. But the defensive takeaway is clear. KEV status changes the timeline. Combined with an EPSS percentile of 0.97907, this vulnerability ranks very high compared with other CVEs for predicted exploitation likelihood. So the question for defenders is not, could someone eventually care about this? The question is, where are our ColdFusion instances? Are they affected? And how fast can we close the gap? Conceptually, the attack path starts with reachability. If a ColdFusion service is exposed to a network an attacker can reach, and it processes a path name through the vulnerable code path, the weakness is in how that path name is limited to a restricted directory. Path traversal attacks are dangerous because they turn an ordinary application assumption, this file operation stays in the safe area, into a trust boundary failure. For this CVE, the official description says exploitation can lead to arbitrary code execution in the context of the current user. Defensively, that current user context matters. The permissions assigned to the ColdFusion process become part of the blast radius. If that service account can access sensitive application files, write to important directories, or interact with other systems, the operational impact can grow quickly. To check exposure, start with inventory, not assumptions. Find every Adobe ColdFusion instance, production, staging, disaster recovery, developer test systems, and older servers that may still front legacy applications. The NVD description states that ColdFusion versions 2025.9, 2023.20, and earlier are affected. For the exact supported remediation path and any vendor-specific details, use Adobe's advisory rather than guessing from asset names or package labels. Next, determine reachability. Is the ColdFusion service directly internet-facing? Is it reachable from partner networks, VPN users, or internal segments with broad access? Also check whether the server runs with more permissions than it needs. Because the stated impact is code execution in the context of the current user, least privilege can materially reduce damage even while patching is underway. The immediate action is to follow Adobe's security guidance and update affected ColdFusion deployments according to the vendor advisory. Prioritize internet-facing systems first, then high-value internal applications, then remaining environments. While patching is being scheduled or validated, reduce exposure. Place ColdFusion behind appropriate access controls where possible, limit who can reach administrative and application interfaces, and avoid broad network access that is not required for business function. Review the operating system account used by ColdFusion and remove unnecessary privileges. Check file system permissions around application directories, upload areas, configuration files, and any locations the service can read or write. These hardening steps are not a substitute for patching, especially with KEV status, but they can reduce the blast radius if an exposed system is targeted before remediation is complete. For detection and monitoring, focus on deviations from normal ColdFusion behavior. In web and application logs, look for unusual requests to ColdFusion endpoints, especially requests containing encoded directory traversal patterns, unexpected file path references, or abnormal bursts of errors. Normal traffic should generally follow known application routes and predictable request shapes. Sudden probing across many paths deserves investigation. On the host, watch for new or modified files in application-accessible directories, unexpected changes to configuration, and file access outside normal application areas. Process monitoring is also important. The ColdFusion service user should not normally launch unexpected child processes or administrative tools. Finally, monitor outbound connections from the application server. A ColdFusion server that suddenly initiates unfamiliar external connections or unusual internal lateral traffic should be treated as a potential incident signal, especially if the host was unpatched during known exposure. Quick recap. CVE 2026-48282 is a critical Adobe ColdFusion path traversal vulnerability, tracked as CVE-22. The official description says it can lead to arbitrary code execution in the context of the current user, does not require user interaction, and has changed scope. The score is a perfect 10.0, and the CISA KEV listing means defenders should treat this as active priority work, not backlog cleanup. Confirm affected versions against Adobe's advisory, patch quickly, restrict reachability, reduce service privileges, and monitor for abnormal ColdFusion requests and host behavior. If this brief helped you decide what to patch first, subscribe to the Daily Ranked CVE Brief. We rank the day's vulnerabilities by real exploitation signal, CISA KEV, first EPSS and CVSS every day. The full ranked report is linked in the description.